When you type something into ChatGPT, where does it actually go? Last year, a friend of mine, a senior associate at a real firm, asked me if it was safe to use ChatGPT to summarize a client's contract. I told him I'd find out and get back to him. I spent the next 3 weeks reading every line of OpenAI's data policy, every link inside it, and every news story about how user prompts get handled. The answer I gave him is more interesting than the headlines give it credit for. It comes down to a single line on OpenAI's own help page that almost nobody reads. Most explainers on this topic give you one of two answers. Either OpenAI uses your data to train, don't worry about it, or OpenAI uses your data to train, panic. Both are wrong. The truth is your prompt goes through 5 distinct places between the moment you press send and the moment it stops existing. Each place has different rules, each place has different risk, and one of them is missing from every diagram OpenAI publishes. The breakdown I'm about to walk you through uses the same kind of data lifecycle framing that privacy engineers and regulators use: collection, transmission, storage, processing, and use, applied to a single ChatGPT prompt. Stage 1 is the easy part. You type your prompt into a text box. That text exists in 2 places at this moment. The first is your browser's memory. The second is your operating system's clipboard if you pasted it from somewhere else. Both are fine. Both stay on your machine. The risk here is not the prompt. The risk is what you pasted to get the prompt. If you copied a contract, a medical note, or a client email into ChatGPT, that source document is now sitting on your clipboard for any other app to read until you copy something else. Most professionals don't think about this. They should. Stage 2 is the trip. The moment you hit enter, your prompt is encrypted using TLS and shipped to OpenAI's servers, which run on Microsoft Azure and other cloud providers, mostly in the United States. This part is the most secure leg of the journey. The encryption holds. Nobody in the middle is reading it, but the part everyone misses about this stage is the destination. If you are not in the US, your prompt is crossing a border. For European users, that means GDPR. For Australian users, the Privacy Act. For Indian users, the DPDP Act, which begins enforcement in 2027. The wire is safe. The arrival is the regulatory event. Stage 3 is where most people's understanding of this pipeline ends, and where the actual risk begins. Your prompt and ChatGPT's response are now sitting in OpenAI's logs. The rules for how long they stay there depend on which product you are using. On the API, prompts are kept for up to 30 days for abuse monitoring. On consumer ChatGPT, your conversations stay until you delete them. Deleted conversations are removed within 30 days unless something in them gets flagged for review. And there is a bigger exception than any setting. In May of 2025, a federal court in the New York Times copyright case ordered OpenAI to preserve every ChatGPT conversation, including deleted ones and including temporary chats, for as long as the case continued. That preservation obligation for new chats was lifted in September of 2025, but a slice of every conversation logged between April and September of 2025 is still retained today, regardless of what any user did. Temporary chats are not a hiding place either. OpenAI's own temporary chat FAQ says that for safety purposes, a copy may still be kept for up to 30 days, and the court preservation order applied to them just like every other conversation. Either way, you do not actually control retention. OpenAI does. The reason this matters is that none of your settings can override it. Even if you turned off chat history, even if you deleted the conversation the moment it finished, those settings affect what trains future models. They do not affect whether OpenAI keeps a copy. So when you delete a chat, what you are actually doing is removing it from your sidebar immediately, and then trusting that it leaves the rest of the system over the next 30 days. If the chat has been flagged for review, it can be retained longer than 30 days, and OpenAI does not publish how long. Stage 4 is the stage that does not appear in any OpenAI diagram I have ever seen. OpenAI has used outsourced human workers on its safety systems since at least 2021. The most documented case involved Kenyan workers employed through a firm called Sama, who were paid to label disturbing content so OpenAI could train ChatGPT's filters. Sama ended its OpenAI contract in early 2022. The working conditions were exposed by Time magazine in January 2023, and that year, Kenyan content moderators petitioned their parliament to investigate both OpenAI and Sama. That scrutiny is still ongoing. For your prompt to reach a human reviewer, it does not need to be malicious. It needs to trip a filter. The filters are internal. The criteria are not published. The reviewers themselves often do not know what put the prompt in their queue. Stage 5 is the part most people are worried about, and it is genuinely the smallest source of risk. If you are on a free or plus consumer account and you have not opted out of Improve the Model for Everyone, a fraction of your conversations is eligible to be added to OpenAI's training corpus for the next model. Eligible is doing real work in that sentence. It does not mean every conversation. It does not mean the conversation appears in the model verbatim. Modern training methods fragment, filter, and reweight inputs. But rare is not never. A team of researchers led by Google DeepMind with collaborators at Cornell, Carnegie Mellon, Berkeley, and the University of Washington demonstrated in late 2023 that you can pull memorized training data word for word out of production, large language models with surprisingly little effort. If your conversation is ever added to that training data, your prompt becomes a needle in that haystack. The point of the lawsuits against OpenAI, including the New York Times case filed in late 2023, is that needles get found. So back to my friend, the answer I gave him is the same one I want to give you. It is not the answer the headlines give. It comes from a single line in OpenAI's own data usage FAQ that almost nobody reads. The line says, and these are OpenAI's words, that by default, OpenAI does not use content submitted by customers to its business offerings to improve model performance. Read that carefully because of what it leaves out. The protection is real. It covers ChatGPT Business, which is where the team plans now live, along with ChatGPT Enterprise, ChatGPT Edu, and the API. It does not cover the two products most people actually use. On a free or plus account, your conversations are used to improve future models by default, unless you go into settings and turn that off yourself. Business, Enterprise, Edu, and the API sit on the safe side of that sentence. Free and plus do not. Most articles about ChatGPT privacy never tell you which product they mean. The answer to is it safe depends entirely on the box you didn't realize you ticked when you signed up. The reason I'm focused on ChatGPT is that it is the one most people use. But the same pattern exists across every major cloud AI provider, and in some cases, the retention is longer. Google Gemini keeps your conversations for 18 months by default. You can change the setting to 3 months or 36 months, and you can turn it off entirely beyond. But turning it off does not fully erase your data. Chats that have already been sampled for human review are kept for up to 3 years, according to Google's own published policy. That retention runs separately from anything you control. Anthropic's Claude used to be the most conservative of the three. Until late August of 2025, Claude did not train on consumer chats by default. Deleted conversations were removed within 30 days, and the only long-term retention was for safety-flagged content kept up to 2 years. Then Anthropic changed its policy. The new setting defaults to letting Anthropic train on your data unless you opt out, and if you leave it on, your conversations are retained for up to 5 years. The point is not which provider is the most aggressive. The point is that every provider is, in some form, holding on to your prompts longer than the interface implies. If you are using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude to plan a birthday party, none of this should change your day. If you are pasting sensitive documents or you care about your privacy, the terms you accepted when you signed up are not the terms you want to have. This is where tools like Elephas come in. Elephas is a privacy-friendly AI knowledge assistant for Mac. It provides built-in local LLM models, which means you can run AI on your own machine without sending a single token to OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, or anyone else. For the moments you do want a cloud model, Elephas has smart redaction in beta, which detects and replaces sensitive information in your prompts before they leave your device. You don't have to choose between the productivity of cloud AI and the obligation of confidentiality. You can have both. That's the entire premise. The pipeline I just walked you through has 5 stages, 3 providers, and a single sentence in OpenAI's own data usage FAQ that almost nobody reads. Most people will never read it. You did. If you want to keep using AI without leaving sensitive material in someone else's training corpus, the link to Elephas is in the description. If you want to send this video to the colleague who has been pasting NDAs into ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude all week, then they have to hear this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.